Hi, thanks very much for joining me again. It's nice to see you back. The project we're looking at today is a Prokraft Pro Grind kit, which is this one here. They come by a couple of brand names. We call ours a Pro Grind. It's basically a grinder mechanism inset in a section here. It's all pre-assembled and it just needs pushing into a body. That makes it sound fairly simple. To be honest, it is fairly simple, but there are a couple of measurements that you need to get right to get these kits in. Now, one of the first things I'm going to say about this kit is that you do not need a special turning tool to insert it. You will see if I hold it up, there's a couple of, I don't know whether the camera's going to quite pick that up, there's a couple of little lugs on there. There are people that sell turning tools for installing these lugs. Those lugs are not there for wood, those lugs are there to insert this mechanism into a metal body. Lower down, if I spin it around, you'll see there's there's tiny weeny little lugs in there that run along. They probably stick out, or probably even less than a millimetre. Those are the bits that hold this kit in the wood, not the clip. In fact, you can remove the clip, take it off if you want to, if it's getting in the way. When it comes to inserting it, you have to squash them in a bit to push them up into the right, into the hole. Basically, this section with the little lug, the inner bit is fractionally under 38 millimetres, and these little bits here that stick out are fractionally over 38 millimetres. So when you've got a 38 millimetre drill bit up there, 38 millimetres is really common for an awful lot of pepper grinders. That will just push up into your body. It will hold it there firm, and it won't spin round when the mechanism's turned. One word of warning is it won't come out again either. You shouldn't need glue, but it will just push up there. But once it's in and it's there to stay. The beauty of these kits, of course, is that they have a ceramic grinder. Most of our kits have ceramic grinders anyway. We tend not to touch metal, and we certainly don't do plastic and nylon ones because they're a waste of time. And it adjusts on the bottom there. You perhaps hear that clicking. So the advantage is that it adjusts at the bottom. You can set your adjustment and it stays there. There's no top knob. And let's have a look at what goes on at this end. Well, that's just the bare shaft. Many other kits you'll see with a great big piece of plastic here, and people will tell you it's a 15th, 16th of an inch drill bit. What a pain. Ours is like that. It takes an 11mm drill bit. It's dead easy. Again, that's got little lugs on there. An 11mm hole. You can push that in by hand. No special drilling required. It's quite small, so you can make your mortise and tenon for this section fairly easily, in whichever way you want to. It really is a pretty straightforward and simple kit. I've got a big lump of beech over the other side. I'm going to trim that down and get it round, and then show you how I mount the piece of wood for this kit. I'm going to stress now, the most important thing about these kits is getting the holes level. It must be level. If I hold that back from the camera a bit, if you can imagine, we've put that in the bottom of a large piece of wood, and this, you can make a 12-inch kit with this. We need to get the hole level at the top. If we don't get the hole level at the top, that is going to try and bend, which means the grinder mechanism in the bottom isn't sitting flush. It'll sit at an angle like that. It won't grind properly. So the top and bottom must be level. It's not difficult. We'll do either end of the drilling. In the middle, if it doesn't meet a smack on in the middle, it doesn't really matter, because the only bit in the middle is this bit and a load of peppercorns or herbs or spices, whatever it is that you're turning. But that is the most important thing with doing these kits. Basically, there are a few drill sizes that you need. I've mentioned the top, that's 11mm, 38mm for the main body, 42mm for this bit here. You don't necessarily need a drill bit for that. You can probably use your wood turning tool and do it manually on the end of the blank. And that's pretty much it. The rest is, No, it isn't quite it. Of course you need a hole all the way through the middle. 25 mils, although it doesn't really matter if you wanted to do 38 mils all the way through. I would suspect that's probably going to be quite hard work. You could do. So generally the common size is 25 millimeters. It is for our UK kit. When you look at other kits, you'll see 27 millimeters, 15th, 16ths of an inch, 1 and 1/16 inch drill bits. I'll tell you what, if you want them, fine, go and get them. You'll spend a fortune on drill bits, and frankly, you don't need to. Anyway, I'll go and get the wood. I'll trim it up, pop it on there, and I'll show you how I go around making one of these. The blank I'm starting with here is around about 70 mils square. I really wouldn't go anything lower than probably about 60 mils square. And as I've said, the kit makes a kit up to 12 inches long, and this is as big a piece of wood as I can get on my bandsaw. So I don't know quite how long it is. Well, it's 14 inches long. But we've got to do some trimming up first. So I'll trim the blank up first. And then we'll look at cutting some tenons and marking out for the top section and the main body, and cutting some dovetails to put them in the dovetail jaws on the chuck. So I've trimmed my blank down, and there's a great big holy knot there that you can see, and another little bit here. What I'm now going to do is cut a dovetail. So we're going to mount the main body and the head in dovetail jaws on the chuck. I'm going to try and do the joints somewhere around here to try and get rid of this. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work yet. It's going to make the project a little bit smaller than I first imagined, but these kits, although they're 12 inches to start with, very easy just to cut the shaft down, file it off at the end to make a smaller kit. So you start with a big one, but if you want to only make a kit so big, you can do that as well. So let's go ahead and see if we can split these two sections for the main body and for the head, for the grinder head. I need at least 50 millimeters for the grinder head of this end. Just looking at this knot that I've left, to put a mark there at 60 mils and another one here at 80, but I really don't know where that hole goes to in there, so we'll just see what happens. So I've got a dovetail tenon on this side and a dovetail tenon on this side. Most of my hole is in the middle, so I'm going to just start to part these off and then separate them on the bandsaw. So here are my two bits. That's the main one, and the knot has gone out of there, fortunately. That is the knot, and you can see it was really pretty deep in there. There's a tiny little bit of it left on for the head section. Because this is small, I'm not too worried about it, but I certainly wouldn't have used a piece that size if it had that bit missing from it. The next bit we're going to do is the main body, so we're going to put this in a chuck and then we're going to look at drilling the ends. So as we're looking at it now, we've got the main body of the blank mounted in the chuck. So we're now going to start the drilling down the bottom end. So this is the head end and this is the bottom end, and we're going to start drilling at the bottom. Now I'm lucky enough, I've got a 42mm drill bit. If you don't have one, I think you can actually cut that out manually. I have done one, but I wasn't videoing it at the time. You have to be quite careful because it's quite a long piece and you may need to make sure you don't get a catch in the end. For the purposes of the video, I'm going to use this. It wasn't very expensive. I think there was about 5 or 6 quid from China, sadly, and the reason it's from China is because Bosch don't make one. But when it comes to the 38mm one, I've got a nice Bosch force and a bit. So we're going to bring that up there. I've made sure it's centered. We're going to have the speed on around about 600 RPM, and following the instructions, I'll put them up on the screen. We're going to drill 20mm with this 42mm drill bit, 20mm up into the body. about 21, I think, on there. Don't know whether the camera will quite pick that up. Okay, so we've done the 42mm. Now what we're going to do is the 38mm hole a little bit further in. With Forstner bits, always start with the biggest one first and work your way down to the smaller one. Each one leaves a little indentation in the end, which is your centre mark for the next drill to come along. Having found my ruler, I can just double check and tell you 35mm. That's that distance there. Okay, so from there to there, 35mm. And at this point it's worth having a little bit of a clear out of your wood blank. Before I go any further, I'm going to have just a slight sand out of there, and if you have the kit you can actually test fit just to make sure that that fits in there, which it does. Look, there's a good fit of 42mm. If this bit was a bit bigger and 45, it doesn't really matter. It's only just to locate that. That won't go past your 38mm bit in there anyway. You can see the little ledge inside there. So that 42mm section on the plastic won't fit past there anyway. So that is how far we've got at the moment. I am going to have a little tidy up of this end, and I'm actually going to start shaping this end. If I want to put some finish in here, this is the time to do it now. So I'm now going to get a 25mm drill bit and go as far up into here as I can do. This is the point where if you've got a really long drill bit, it's great. You can try and drill the whole lot at once if you want to. However, if you have something like an auger bit, or any bit for that matter, that gets a certain distance and it starts wobbling, what that means is that you're not centred, and when it comes out the other end it won't be in the centre, and that's when you'll have a problem lining up the shaft of the grinder in here. So I'm going to go, if I can get halfway, that'll be great, and we're going to turn it around and go the other end in a minute. But to start with, we'll just do that 25mm as far as we can. I'm just going to put a little bit of sanding sealer just around the edge there. It's worth putting a little undercut in there and just a little curve there. When the pepper mill is standing up, you want it to be standing on the outside edge, not rocking on the centre bit there. This bit doesn't need to be a food safe finish because this isn't in contact with the food, neither does the outside. If you want to put a food safe finish in it, inside is the place for that. So when we did this end, it was all flush and level because we did it on the lathe. So if we turn it around and put it back on the chuck that way, it will mean when it's level at this end, it will be centred up this end, or as near as, damn it. So we can now look at drilling our centre hole all the way through there. So we've got a hole all the way through. I've got the tailstock supporting this end. I'm now just going to trim this off flat to make the tenon for the top knob, the grinder knob, to sit onto. Now we can look at starting to shape and have the fun job of making this look the way we want it to look. I'm actually going to take it off here. Let's move the tailstock away and that away. We'll take that off And I've actually got a scrap bit of wood. So I normally use hardwood, but this is actually softwood. I'm just going to pop this in here. What this is going to do is just act like a dead centre, if you like. And we're going to pop that on there and bring the tailstock, and then we can look at shaping this as we want. And we've got a little bit of space up this end to keep us away from the chuck, so we can finish turning and shaping that. And there we have the main body pretty much finished. Now onto the top. On the main body I've got the tenon here, so I've got to cut the mortise here, and this is the part where you can really choose to do it whichever way you wanted to. If I'd cut that flat, I could make a tenon on this bit to slot in there, but you have to slot these two bits together and make sure that they fit level. You can't just have them loose on the top, otherwise the shaft will move around like that. It needs to be held central and firm, so you need a mortise and tenon in both bits, and how you do it is entirely up to you. It is possible, depending on which type of fitting you make, to actually cut the fitting, install it in the head, and then turn the body and head all together to get a really good joint between the two. This design is slightly different. I've got a curved section at the top here, and I'm going to make a curved section to fit on top here as well, slightly shallow. So what I'm going to do is cut the mortise out in this section here, and I'm going to use this to fit it, and when I've done that, it'll then be an 11mm drill into the centre for the little plastic fitting for the top. I'm actually going to put a little bit of finish on this side. When it turns round, it's going to be in the chuck, so just to stop me getting my fingers caught in the chuck, put a little bit of I'll sand it a little bit of finish on here. Now we've mounted that in the other jaws, we can turn this, making sure that we don't turn down and expose the hole in the top. The whole idea of this is that you don't have a hole in the top, it's just one solid piece of wood. So now we come to the assembly, and it is pretty straightforward. We're going to start off with the grinding cap, or the knob, whichever you like to call it, the small white piece, our 11mm hole, and simply it pushes in there just with your thumb. You don't need any tools to do that. That is now ready, and it slots just on the top of the shaft like so, you can see, and it'll pull off like so. Now To install the main grinder part into here, it's sometimes worth measuring where this metal rod is going to come to. Now, because of that huge knot I had earlier, means I'm going to have to shorten this rod. You can do it when you've inserted it, but it's frankly just a little bit easier to do it beforehand. So I'm going to shorten that now, and then we're going to look at pushing this up into the main body. So you can see I've cut that off, and I'm just going to literally file the top just to take off any sharp bits of metal and just chamfer the edges off very slightly. It's aluminium, so it's not very hard at all. There we go. Right, now to install the rest of this in the main body, it's pretty easy. You push it in. As I said at the beginning, these lugs that are on the side that flex in and out don't actually need to be there. Those are there for when this kit is installed in a metal body. They can be removed if you want. I'm not going to bother doing that today. If you just bend them in a bit, they're quite flexible. Bend them in a bit, and these little lugs here will grip into the 38mm hole that we've got. Once that's pushed in, it won't come out again. So if you think you might want to get this in and out, it's worth trimming off these, and you'll then have to glue this part in. But what I'm going to do now, I don't want to do any gluing. I'm going to push that bit up there. I'm going to slot that into, there we go. It's gone so far, and I've now got to press that in. I am going to just hold the grinder shaft, and I'm going to undo that. And the reason I'm doing that is just to move the small grinding burr away from the big grinding burr, because I don't want to damage them when I push it in. It takes quite some pressure to push that in. I've got on my tailstock here an arbor with a little bit of tape on just to protect it, to make sure I don't damage the end here. At this end I've got my chuck still with a hole through, because this shaft needs somewhere to go out the other end. It is then a case of very carefully and slowly just pushing the mechanism up into the hole. Don't rush it, nice and slow. You do need to tighten your tailstock up, and you need to make sure that the grinder adjuster knob goes inside there, otherwise it'll be pivoting on the top there. Let's have a look and see how we're doing. We're pretty much there, to be honest. I might just go just a fraction more. Just double check that that's sitting correctly. It is. There we go. We can see the grinder adjuster there. I have to hold the knob at this end to adjust that in. You can hear that clicking around. So there we have our mill part all inserted in the bottom there. The correct length of shaft sticking out the top. We can take our top, we can slot it on there like so. And there we have a finished mill. What I will go and do now is pop and get some peppercorns and show you how it grinds. The beauty of the mills, of course, is that you don't need to adjust them each time. You just simply pull the lid off and then probably do what I do and spill peppercorns everywhere. There we go. I won't put too many in, just a few for testing. There we go, that's quite a nice grind, but I can make it finer if I want to with each click. There we go, there's the finished ProGrind mill kit. So there we go. Just one thing to recap on: when you've put the main mechanism inside the body, occasionally you might find that the burrs stick a little bit. If you get that happen, just take that the adjuster knob completely off and just give it a wiggle just till it pops loose. Sometimes they just get a little bit sticky when they're pushed in, because it's quite some pressure to push those in. So that's how to do that. But it makes a lovely kit, very easy to fill on the top. We've got it nice and centered down the shaft there. Dead easy, lovely kits. It's been quite epic, this video. Not for the kit, it's much more difficult to explain how to do it than it is to actually just do it. But the other reason is it's really quite a size. I don't know how tall this is, but I'm imagining it's probably around about 11-12 inches, something like that. I hope that's been useful. Don't forget, you don't need any special tools to do this. A couple of different drill sizes, some of them you can do by hand. Thanks very much for your time. Enjoy whatever it is you do in your workshop, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye bye for now. Take care.